You're online, please start.
Hello, my name is Irina Litchfield. Many know me as Crypto Superwoman. I'm here to talk to you about the creation of true global capital markets. Before we dive into this exciting topic, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I am president of Lumeria, a platform dedicated to establishing space as an asset class. I'm also founder of Blockchain Cubed, financial technology company, and I'm founding advisor of ABE Global Securities Exchange, who is leading the world in the creation of truly global capital markets. I'm an advisor of Space Fund, early stage venture fund focused on space, Aqua, platform for all your company's organizational needs, and ProChain Capital, crypto hedge fund. I am passionate about innovation and spent over 15 years of integrating leading-edge technology and finance. I love what I do, and I value my freedom. Now that you know a little bit better myself, let me dive into the topic of the discussion. First and foremost, I would like to address the most common question I hear when I speak about the creation of true global capital markets. The question is, don't we already have global capital markets? The answer to this question is kind of. The thing is, it is only accessible to the wealthiest people in the world and is extremely expensive to carry out. Now, if you're a citizen of Mexico and have made a few $1,000,000 in the telecom industry, it is fairly straightforward to get an account at JP Morgan. With that, you can invest in US securities, probably some emerging markets equities, bonds, etc. Basically, anything that JP Morgan wants you to be able to invest in. But that's obviously the rarefied exception that proves the rule. It is an exception for two reasons. One, access. How many developing world citizens acquire millions of dollars? Vanishingly few. It is extremely challenging to create wealth in the developed world, but imagine trying to do it in Bolivia. It is an entirely different scale of a problem. And two, inventory. Imagine that as privileged Central American national who was able to get JP Morgan account. You want to invest in an exciting Israeli space company you read about on Reddit. Well, too bad. Unless you get a bunch of JP Morgan gatekeepers to decide the deal is right for them, and I guess for you, since it is your money that's at risk. You are out of luck. And forget about buying an exciting cryptocurrency like Monero or Digibyte. You can probably get Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum, but you're very much at the mercy of your bankers. Obviously, there are worse problems than that in the world, but let's think about making an ideal world. So, when I talk about creation of global capital markets, I am talking about inexpensive, true, open global marketplace available to all, not just the most privileged. We want a world where a cab driver in Abuja, capital of Nigeria, can invest in an exciting space company she reads about on Reddit. How do we get there? That's our North Star. Now, Many questions follow this statement. Why has this not been done before? Why do we need it? How do we make it a reality? And is it even possible to do so? Let me address why it has not been done before first. No, it is not because the world is evil and the privileged want to keep it all to themselves. It is simply because up until now, we did not have proper mechanisms to carry it out. Attempts have been made to make it a reality, but every time we tried, it was clear that it is simply too expensive. Every country has its own regulatory regime around capital. Whether they're strictly regulating what kind of accounts their citizens are allowed to have, and whether they even want the capital to leave the country, or if they want to strictly regulate the type of investments made in their country. So the answer is, it is complicated and hard landscape to navigate. So why do we need it? Because people want it. We live in a world of global connectivity. People now have access to any information at the top of their fingertips. And most importantly, they want to participate in investment opportunities. The Nigerian cab driver very much wants to invest her pay in an exciting opportunities she read about. She thinks she can generate alpha. And who are we as capital markets professionals to deny her that? We saw clear global demand during the ICO era in 2017 and 2018. People were willing to deal with incredibly convoluted products and buying experiences in order to access exciting investments. This is not some kind of a World Bank study showing that we think people want to make risky investments, which is very essence of capital formation. We saw it. We saw it happen. The market very clearly announced that it wants this type of assets. Capital will follow these investments. Now, that was a time when a lot of offering was less than legal, but that's not the point I'm making here. The point is, we saw a huge demand for investment opportunities from investors from all over the world. They all understood the risks. They all did their own research. And outdated dialing for dollars was no longer needed. For those of you who are not familiar with what dialing for dollars means, here's an explanation. During early IPO times, in the early 90s, all stock was pushed to unsophisticated investors. It is another outdated term, by brokers literally getting on the phone and calling potential investors in hopes to sell stock to them. Can you imagine how expensive and outdated and inefficient it was? It was the only way, so by definition, it was the best way. However, in the world of today, in the new world, we no longer need or do we want to be sold stock, especially via cold calling brokers. We have evolved to new level of sophistication, to be comfortable to process information and to draw our own conclusions. So, how do we make this a reality? I'm pleased to inform you that it is possible because of innovation, specifically blockchain. We are finally at the point where with certainty we can say that this technology allows us to create secure and inexpensive process that gives us the ability to eliminate countless expensive intermediaries that are in place to ensure compliance. Regulatory compliance of securities is complex, and it is to be prevent fraud. Let's think about this together. Every security needs to be authenticated before it is transferred. There are over 20 databases in one transfer. Each of these databases, generally run by different organizations, must be licensed, paid, and synchronized to ensure validation of authenticity. Answers to following questions must be answered with 100% certainty. Is the security what we think it is? Is the person who we think they are? Does the person own the security? Is the intended buyer whom they say they are? Is the intended buyer a resident of the country they say they are? Does the intended buyer have funds available to buy the asset? Did the intended buyer get their money legally? Does the intended buyer tend to finance terrorism with this purchase? Is the asset that they think they're buying a real asset? Does the asset they think they're buying transact in their country? Does the intended buyer have an actual understanding of the asset attributes, securities, bond, coupons, dividend history, etc.? Does the seller actually own the securities? Are the securities the seller owns able to transact, not encumbered somehow? Can the seller legally transact with intended buyer? All these questions must be validated within just one closed border jurisdiction. Add cross-border transfer complexity to that, and you can see why it becomes very expensive to transact at scale, which is a requirement for the public or large private offerings. In just one jurisdiction, not even talking about global offerings. Blockchain allows us to create transactions that are self-authenticating. Early user interface issues aside, it is now becoming possible to do this self-authenticating transactions using blockchain technology. Nearly all of the above questions can be easily addressed using this tech. For example, how do we know this asset exists? The answer? Math. How do we know it's owned by this person? Answer? They can prove it unambiguously. How do we know it's transferable? Answer? The source code. The nature of immutability allows us to answer so many of these questions. The way we look at securities becomes absolutely different in every way when there's literally an immutable single source of truth that can be known before any transaction. We now also have over a decade of analyzing blockchain technology, and it is clear that it is unbelievably secure. The fundamental developments in game theory, technology, and distributed systems in general continue to stand the test of time, even as the bounty for attacking them grows. For example, if someone was able to compromise the Bitcoin blockchain or even Ethereum, they would be able to extract billions of dollars themselves. That's a big bug bounty. That bounty is out there, has been out there, and will continue to be available. And all signs point to this technology remaining secure because it was architected at the very low level to be secure. Think about it. Basically, every major bank, every corporation, and even government have been hacked. Not Bitcoin. So it is clear that we now have proven secure technology that eliminates the heavy burden of countless intermediaries and allows for cost-effective offering tokenized securities. But that's only half of the recipe for the successful creation of truly global capital markets. The other half of it is one that seems most challenging to many. There is an understanding that all jurisdictions are driven by incentive to block capital from leaving. And so legislations were built around that. So why all of a sudden regulators would want to allow cross-border transfer? Simple. To attract more capital and welcome foreign business into their jurisdiction. For several years now, we have been witnessing a rise in many jurisdictions, providing favorable legislations in hopes of attracting and relocating businesses from other countries. Brain drain has been a real issue for those countries that are not willing to adapt to new world. Also, remember, I told you that global capital markets infrastructure already exists. It exists for the wealthy. So the regulators don't really need to create new laws. In reality, all regulators care about is making sure that the security is not a fraud. And so the innate nature for DLT, distributed ledger technology, makes their job much easier. It is immutable, self-authenticating record-keeping system, a paradise for regulators. These are the reasons why it is now possible to create inexpensive public offering. Once you create public offering on Tier 1 securities exchange, you then can create a depository receipt, which is a standardized offering that can be listed in other countries. A depository receipt is essentially an entity like a bank buying a bunch of shares of stock in a company in another country. For example, a bank in Sri Lanka may buy 10,000 apples of share for sale in Sri Lankan citizens. Then they securitize this holding and list that holding on their local stock market. The easiest thing to reason about it is the case where they buy 10,000 shares of AAPL and then list 10,000 shares on this new company that just exists to hold the AAPL stock on the local stock market. Someone with a local brokerage account can buy shares or part of shares of this Sri Lankan security and feel pretty comfortable that they will be richer if the price of AAPL goes up. Less rich if it goes down. And hopefully they can buy more or sell it if they want to manage their exposure to AAPL. These transactions will happen according to their local securities laws and in their native currency. So, depository receipt is like a standard shipping container. Regulators from other jurisdictions then do not need to look inside this receipt to see what it is. Apple does not need to think about or care that someone bought 10,000 shares and is now selling an interest in its shares in Sri Lanka. And Sri Lankan regulators can do some very light and standard due diligence to ensure that Sri Lankan issuer, a bank, does indeed own the shares of AAPL that they're selling an interest in. So the shipping container is a great analogy here, as depository receipt allows securities to get around the world effectively. This is a simple but yet complicated steps to creating true global capital markets, accessible to all. This is basically the approach ABE is taken. ABE is a global securities exchange that I am founding advisor of that will work with companies to list their securities on relatively friendly national exchange and then issue depository receipt in a number of jurisdictions to attract investment. Now, it should definitely be said that a massive benefit to this is that the same platform, the same bits and bytes software systems will manage both the underlying security, where it actually trades, and the depository receipts around the world. Bananas, right? It's definitely hard, but it's very recently become possible. And so on one platform with one software financial integration, a company can list their stock and then essentially be republished all the way around the world. And it is a very reasonable fee because at ABE, the main motivation is to get that Nigerian cab driver investing on the platform. It is great to have a huge market, and we think that we'll realize many of the benefits of the process described previously by structurizing our securities, by structurizing our markets in a new way. Let's democratize access. Let's distribute the wealth creation much more wildly. To summarize, we finally have proven technology that allows us to forego extremely expensive steps needed for company to go public and regulatory infrastructure. And incentives allows us to utilize this proven technology to make public offering truly global. Blockchain allows companies to go public inexpensively. Now we have the last question to answer. Why? Why do we need true open global capital markets? We need this for wealth creation, for wealth distribution across our planet. We need it to empower entrepreneurs around the world to build companies and create solutions for the ever-growing complexities of modern reality. It's time for the next natural stop in the progression of human civilization. It's time toward the golden era. Thank you for your time. Please contact me. Reach out to me with the questions. I want to hear from you. You can find me on any platform. My handle name is @CryptoSuperwoman, or just Google Irina Litchfield. I'm very responsive and I'm looking forward to seeing you, to hearing you, and most importantly, co-creating new era of transparency together.